Hello, my name's Rob Edwards and welcome back to my YouTube channel. And today we're talking spoilers for WandaVision Episode 8, also known as Previously On. If you haven't seen WandaVision up to this point, I highly recommend you go and watch it. It's a really good show, but don't hang around for this video because I am going to be doing spoilers, particularly for Episode 8, but anything from other episodes might come up during my discussion, so you have been warned. So, Episode 8, an interesting beast, taking us back and not forward, really. The one thing that you would say, really, is that the story hasn't really moved onwards. We got some really beautiful stuff, some really great character work, and some real insight into some of the things which were sort of leading up to our current dilemma. But we didn't really get any new information, apart from, possibly, arguably, in the post-credit scene. So, Episode 8 was really about recontextualizing the stuff that we've seen, what it actually meant. And there were some really interesting things in there, some things which I didn't think they were going to do. We saw Agatha as a witch, and sure, that's fine, we kind of expected that, and the whole Salem thing, there'd been enough nods and hints about that it wasn't a huge surprise. Seeing a suggestion that Wanda had powers as a kid long before encountering an Infinity Stone, that was a surprise. Some commentator I've seen going, oh, this means there are mutants in the Marvel Universe already. And sure, maybe it does, but I don't know that we can really hang too much of a change of direction on the MCU on that. Still, it is interesting, although it does somewhat raise the question about Pietro and his powers, and did he also have at least a hint of them when he was a kid? Speaking of the Infinity Stone, we got to see Wanda's interaction with it, where her powers were properly triggered. And we got to see her see a vision of, well, everybody that I've seen has talked about it being a vision of the future, and probably that's what it is. But I do wonder if it's not a nod at, again, back to my favourite theory from a couple of episodes ago, where actually we caught a glimpse of an alt Wanda there, a Wanda from a different reality. I have nothing to support this. Let's be fair, let's be honest about it. Apart from wanting to have alt Wanda in the show. But I think there are two explanations for it, and I don't think just she's seeing the future is necessarily what happened there. We got to see Wanda visit Sword, and we got to see that actually she did not take Vision's body. I actually really liked that. I thought that was quite good. And we actually got to see, I think, that Wanda was actually in the process of coping fairly well with everything. She was feeling grief, and I love that line. Everyone knows that line. If you've seen WandaVision, you know the line I'm talking about. But what is grief except love persevering? I think it's wonderful writing. But she was dealing with her grief in a sensible way. She came to get some closure. She wanted to bury Vision's body. Hayward wouldn't let her take the body, and fairly clearly, I think, was attempting to goad Wanda into using her abilities. And that, I think, was the first knock against Wanda's mental well-being, really. That she was coping with this quite well up until that point, and I think that's where things started to go a bit wrong. So she goes to Westview, she goes to the plot that Vision had bought for them to grow old in together, and there's nothing there, and it's really at that moment when she just feels it all. And I think there's a really interesting point here. A while back I was talking about the sort of the optics, if you like, of having Wanda become a bad guy. There are sort of, there are more female characters than this in the MCU, but the two headline Avengers who are women are Black Widow, R.I.P., and Wanda goes crazy because of a boy. it wasn't a really good look. But I think in the moment, it's not unreasonable to suggest that Wanda isn't being a bad guy. When she creates the hex, maybe there are some bad implications of it. And, it's not the shiningest example of good behavior and being sensible about it all. But I think in that moment, I think we could all relate. I know I felt for Wanda at that moment. And I dare anyone in the world to say at some point they haven't lashed out when they shouldn't have. Not probably in quite as grand a manner as Wanda, of course. I can't imagine anyone has created alternate realities and bent the wills of innocent townsfolk to their... But the point is, everybody at some point in their life reaches a point where everything is just too much. And whether that comes out as just drinking or shouting or drugs or something that really, on reflection, was exactly the wrong thing to do, I think we've all been there on the spectrum, on one level or another. And I think it's really interesting that what this means is I think they're steering reasonably clear of this idea of Wanda being a bad guy. I think once she got mixed up with a hex, she didn't really understand what was happening, how it happened even necessarily, and perhaps as she got later on and she was deliberately manipulating the things around her and it was clear that she started to understand, then I think she's on shakier ground there. But in that moment of creation, when she changed Westview to her will, I think she can be forgiven for that moment. For me, anyway. It also interestingly recontextualizes the rather catchy Agatha All Along song, because clearly it wasn't Agatha all along. Okay, Agatha was in the mix, stirring things up and causing problems for Wanda, but I don't actually think there's a great deal of blame going on for Agatha either. The whole kidnapping of the kids thing, yeah. But, if she's just there wanting to find out what's behind this, what's caused all this, to understand what this is. There's no doubt that Agatha is the bad guy currently that we've got for us. And I think that, that is the role that she is in. But in terms of her time spent in the hex, I don't know that she came to the hex for the wrong reason necessarily. I think she came because she was curious as to this sudden spike of magic. I could understand that. The flashback, it's hard to tell really how much of that murdering of her fellow coven witches was down to her deliberate action, or because she'd made a deal with some entity that she shouldn't have, or whether she didn't realise what was going to happen. She genuinely seemed scared when she was being tied to the stake. So I'm not sure whether necessarily Agatha is terribly dark either. There's some dark grey in there, but I don't know if she's necessarily the blackest of souls that are doomed for eternity to hell. Hayward, now there's a guy who is probably doomed to hell, but more on him in a moment. So that's what episode 8 was about, really, recontextualising some of the things that we've seen and some of the things that we've been shown. And where does that leave us in all of the theory crafting we've been doing along the way? Is there still a Mephisto or Chthon waiting in the wings to come out and surprise us all in the 9th episode? Maybe. The balance of probability for me, I think, puts it towards not. I really think by this stage, I would have wanted to see more. Now, it's possible that we have seen more and I just don't realise it yet. So the weirdness of Pietro at the end of the episode before, Snoop is going to snoop, what's that about? Is there something significant about the rabbit? It seems weird, but it could just be a witch's familiar. Sometimes a witch's familiar is just a witch's familiar. But we do have that. We have the the Ralph question mark. We have the missing person that got Jimmy Woo involved in all this. That's still hanging over us. And what about my theory? What about my theory about alternate Wanda? I think it's looking unlikely now, but again, as I was talking about before, that sort of flash forward that Wanda had when she was looking into the Infinity Stone, it could have been a vision of an alt Wanda. It could still be the case. I don't think it is. But there's still, one fingertip hanging onto the cliff there where it could still happen. We shall see. So I want to finish up with a bit of speculation about what the finale is going to be. And actually, I don't know what the finale is going to be because I'm not sure we know what type of story we are in. Despite all the sitcom trappings of most of this season, it is fairly clear that we are not in a comedy anymore. So I'm not expecting hijinks and misunderstandings and farce and everyone comes out of it looking shiny at this stage. At the end of it all, everyone realised it was just a bad dream, to borrow a line from young Wanda. So that's not what we're in. But we have got some outstanding questions about what we are in. Are we in Act 1? Because there has been talk about Wanda being in Spider-Man No Way Home, is it called? I think that's Spider-Man 3, is it now called? And we've talked about her being in Doctor Strange 2, The Multiverse of Madness. And we have the whole multiverse question still hanging over us. If this is the first act of a 3-act story taking in those 2 movies, we could be rattling towards a cliffhanger here. I kind of hope not. I kind of think that would be a really unsatisfying end to a story which I have loved, WandaVision. But each episode has only eked us forward just a little bit every week. The pace has been really quite slow. And to not get a really satisfactory conclusion to the events of this season until Spider-Man at December and then Doctor Strange next year, I don't think that really works for me. So I hope we don't get it. But if we are only in Act 1 of a bigger story, then a cliffhanger seems a likely outcome. But otherwise, are we in a tragedy or are we in a triumph? Because if we're in a tragedy, the outcome is clear. The vision that Wanda manifested is not going to survive the collapse of the Hex. We may be left with soulless White Vision, courtesy of the end credits scene, but there's a good chance that he too will be destroyed along the way, because he's clearly going to be an antagonist in the final part, so he's going to need to be defeated, I would have thought. If we're in a tragedy, there's a good chance the twins aren't making it out of this. I quite enjoy Billy and Tommy. I think their 10-year-old versions have been quite fun. I've quite enjoyed them as characters. And we're looking towards Young Avengers for the future, and I would hope that would mean that Billy and Tommy could survive. But they could survive, or they could die only to be manifested in a new way later on, perhaps further down this 3-act structure, if that's what we're looking at. So I think there's a good chance that if we're looking at a tragedy, Vision dies, the twins cease to exist, and Wanda really, really goes off the deep end. I hope that's not what we're getting. But I think we could be. I think it's a distinct possibility. Are we looking at a potential triumph? Well, in that case, I think the obvious solution to the whole problem with the Vision is simply combining the soulless White Vision body that Hayward's animated and the soul of Vision that Wanda has managed to reconstruct into one being, and you could get a genuinely happy ending at the end of it. And Wanda and Vision team up to defeat Agatha and Hayward and whatever is going on with Pietro. We still Still don't really know what that's about. And hopefully we'll get some answers about the missing person, about Ralph, about Mephisto, and all the rest of it. Either way, I'm hoping that the final episode is just a bit longer. I'm not expecting a movie-length episode or anything, but it would be nice for it to be an hour rather than half an hour. I mean, I would like that. But where do I think we're going to end up? I think we're going to end up somewhere in between. I don't think this is going to be an out-and-out tragedy ending on a cliffhanger, but I'm pretty sure the show that we've been presented up to date is not going to have the ultimate happy ending. And I think that means either Vision or the twins are not making it out of this season. Possibly both, but certainly one or the other is not making it out. And is that going to push Wanda into being an out-and-out bad guy for the Multiverse of Madness? I hope not, but I can certainly see that being justifiable on the events that we've seen so far. So there we go. That's my general thoughts about where we're going with the finale of WandaVision. Let me know in the comments down below what you think. Where are we going? What is actually going to happen in the final episode? Are we going to get a cliffhanger, or is there going to be some sort of solid resolution to this arc? Time will tell. I'm very excited. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed that. I will do some sort of wrap-up session, I'm sure, next week about WandaVision as a whole, just where we're at, how I felt, whether I've stopped crying, all of this good stuff. So I will see you then for that. I'm also hoping this week, I know I'm a bit late for this, I'm hoping to get a review for the first episode of the new Superman and Lois show as well later in this week, but I'm not going to promise that. Just keep an eye out for it. You may see it. Anyway, thank you for watching, and I will catch you next time. Cheers.